Communication is a very complex process, and it consists of not only the words that we use, but also the manner in which we speak, the intonation, the tone of voice, the pitch of voice, not to mention such important things like the non-verbal communication. And very often we forget about that. We concentrate so much on the actual words that we want to choose to make the information as clear as possible that we forget about all the other elements. Today, let's concentrate on the intonation. Intonation as such is a crucial element in the act of communication. Without intonation, we will not be understood clearly. Now, there are some difficulties when it comes to using intonation for our benefit, and here I will present some possible difficulties associated with that. The first problematic aspect in using intonation in the right way is your nature, your actual characteristic, because all of us individually, we have some preference. Some people prefer to use intonation in a relatively flat way, and then you just have the difficulty in understanding what sort of emotions the person is trying to convey. The words will be clear enough, but please remember that according to Professor Mehrabian, the actual words that we use, so the verbal communication, plays a relatively small role in the act of communication, whereas two remaining types of communication, which is the non-verbal communication and the paraverbal communication, now they are of the key importance. This is why we should pay particular attention to intonation, because if in your nature it is to use a relatively flat intonation because you've been using this way of speaking your whole life, perhaps this is how you were taught by your parents, perhaps this is the nature in your family, the natural way of speaking, or perhaps you have just watched The Godfather Part 3 and you believe that this is the cool way of speaking. Well, it might as well be, but please be aware of the fact that it is something that makes the communication more difficult, at least for the person on the other side, because they don't know what's in your head or what's in your heart. And using intonation, you can make things easier for them to understand. Another area of difficulty is associated with your mother tongue. And by that I mean, if the language that you learned as the first one when you were a child has a different natural intonation than the foreign language that you use, you are in for a trouble, because it means that it's going to be more difficult for you to get a better grasp of the foreign language. Yes, it will be relatively easy for you to learn vocabulary, even the advanced one. Yes, it will be incredibly easy for you to gather all the knowledge about grammar, but intonation is something that is very often overlooked and omitted in courses of foreign languages, or at least it is not as detailed studied as it should be for the whole act of communication. And especially, but not only, in students of foreign languages at the very beginning of their path. This is something that is very weird for them when they hear that, for instance, in the English language, the intonation varies a lot. There is a different intonation for asking questions, different for statements, different intonation we show when we want to be enthusiastic, and different one when we are sad or depressed, or when we are not interested. There are different types of intonation for all that. And if the English language is a foreign language for you, I'm not surprised that you feel that this intonation is much too strong for you, because there are many languages in which intonation is much more stable, much flatter than the English one. But if the English language is your foreign language, please pay particular attention also to exercises in how to pronounce it right and how to use intonation right. And the third area of possible difficulty is the situation in which the whole act of communication is taking place. For example, if you are speaking to someone in person and you are sitting next to each other, you see each other, you are able to receive a lot of information from the non-verbal communication, from gestures, your body language, eye contact, smile or the lack of it, whether you frown or not. There is a lot of emotions hidden there, a lot of meanings. Then this intonation part, even though it's still important, it probably will not be so difficult to follow. But if you are, let's say, a first-line engineer, first-line support engineer, and you use the communication via the telephone, and if it's in a foreign language for you, the situation is really difficult. In a situation like this, intonation is of the utmost importance, because the information that you want to convey to the end user, to the caller, is that first of all, you are interested in what they are saying. Secondly, you are friendly and open to them, that you want to help them, that you are not only interested in their problem, but also in their well-being. And this can be achieved almost exclusively by using intonation. How to use it right? Well, the simplest answer I can give you is to make it enthusiastic, make it varied, making sure that your intonation is far from being flat. Flat intonation, when the intonation is not varied enough, it shows rather the lack of interest. You may come across as a person who is looking down on others, while when your intonation goes up and down, it can create the feeling that you are interested in the person and you are very open to them and friendly to them. So taking into consideration in how many difficult situations we use our language, in how many situations we communicate, make sure that intonation is something you pay attention to. It may not come naturally, especially at the very beginning. You may have this impression that the exercises that you are doing in order to sound a little bit more enthusiastic are a little bit exaggerated, a little bit too strong, but this is a natural feeling for you, only because you are not used to it. With time, it will come, but you need to practice it. And whoever is responsible for your communication, whoever is responsible for your language training, they should pay attention to that as well. So making your intonation sound enthusiastic and energetic and friendly and open makes you a good communicator, or at the very least, a better communicator. Now, I hope it was a very useful material for you and that you will be able to use it in practice in the future at work as well as in your private life. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, now it's the time to do that, and I'll see you next time.